Okay guys, today we are going to be working on mixed numbers and improper fractions. So I want you to take just a minute and go ahead and write this in your notebook. We have two learning targets today. They're very similar. The first one is I can convert a fraction to a mixed number. And then the second one is I can convert a mixed number to a fraction. So you see that they're really, it's a reciprocal relationship. We're going to go from one to the other. And the title of today's lesson is mixed numbers and improper fractions. And I am going to abbreviate mixed number today with the pound symbol instead of writing out number. So I just want to revisit with you that a fraction, this is what we started talking about earlier, is a comparison of a part to a whole. And when we have that comparison, it's usually a numerator and a denominator. Now, most fractions look like this. They'll have a numerator that is smaller than the denominator. We call that a proper fraction. And then we're going to talk in just a few minutes about something known as an improper fraction. So we have to make sure everybody knows what this means. An improper fraction is a special type of fraction. This is a fraction whose numerator is larger than the denominator. Now we know that typical proper fractions, the numerator would be smaller than the denominator because this would mean 4 parts out of 7 or 4 out of a total of 7. But for an improper fraction, it looks something like this. So I might have 3/2. So what you have to begin to understand is that because the numerator is larger than the denominator, this actually means that this is bigger than 1 whole. Another example would be something like 15/8. And I know that because this numerator is bigger than this denominator, these are greater than 1 whole. Some of them could be multiple wholes, and we're going to talk about what that looks like. What happens when we do that is we end up with something known as mixed numbers. And you guys should be familiar with mixed numbers as well. A mixed number is a whole number combined with a fractional part. So this is a whole number combined with a fraction. In other words, if I have this, then we have to make sure we know what this means. So this is my whole number. And this is my fractional part. So what does that look like? If I were going to draw or model, if we talk about math terms, model 4 1/3, that means I have 4 wholes. So those are completely shaded in. And then if I have 1/3, so I draw my 5th piece, but this one is going to be split into equal thirds, or as equal as you can draw. And I only need 1 of those. So that is what that will look like, because of course we only have 1 out of 3 completely filled in. So this would represent 4 wholes and 1 part out of 3. So we're going to talk about changing these back and forth today. We're going to start by doing mixed numbers to improper fractions. And I'm abbreviating, as you can see. And then on this side, we're going to talk about improper fractions. We're going to turn those back into mixed numbers. So if you want to take just a minute and set up your notebook, you're going to see me draw a line all the way down to the bottom of my notebook. And that's what you want yours to look like. Now that you've set up your notebook, we're going to talk a little bit about what this looks like. So we're going to start with mixed numbers to improper fractions. And we're going to start with a simple example of 3 1/2. So we're going to start by modeling 3 1/2. So that means I need 3 holes, and this time I'm going to draw squares. Now that doesn't mean that we couldn't have drawn circles. Forgive me if my square doesn't really look like a square. Now I drew 4 because I know that it's more than 3 holes. But this one is completely colored in, and I'm going to shade very lightly, and I want you to as well. And this one is shaded in completely, and this one is shaded in completely. Now this last one is different because this is 1, 2, 3 holes. And then this one, I'm going to draw a line down the middle, and I'm going to separate this side because that represents my 1/2. But that doesn't really help me unless I understand what I'm looking at. So if you really think about what you're looking at here, you're really looking at a picture that could be split into halves. So you notice how now this picture looks like this picture, and this one, and this one. If you do it like this, this is 1/2, and this is 2/2. This one doesn't start over. This is 3/2, 4/2, 5/2, 6/2, and we have one final one, and it's right there, and that's 7/2. So 3 1/2 is the same thing as 7 half pieces. So if you think about an apple, if you cut 3 apples in half and another one in half, and you threw away this half that's unshaded, and you gave this half to one friend and this half to another friend, and this half to a friend and this half to a friend. If you did that over and over and over, you would have 7 friends that each got a half of an apple, because 3 1/2 is the same thing as 7 halves. Notice this is an improper fraction because we had more than one whole. So you might be thinking, is there a way that I can do this without drawing a picture? And there is. To change a mixed number to an improper fraction without having to draw the model, because sometimes you don't want to draw a model, especially if your numbers are very large. To change a mixed number to an improper fraction, you see how many of the wholes each fractional part would give you. And you do that by taking the denominator of the fraction and multiplying it by the whole number. So if I model it with this example, this says 2, that's the denominator, times the whole number of 3. So 2 times 3 would be 6. So if you take note of my picture, that represents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little pieces. But that's not my whole picture. So now I have to pick up this last piece. So then the next step is we're going to then add the numerator, because that represents a fractional piece. So earlier we did 2 times 3, which is 6, plus one more piece, so that gives me 7. And then we're going to use the original denominator. So let me show you what this looks like with a couple of examples. This looks like this with some examples. Let's do 5 and 4/9. 5 and 4/9. Okay, so we don't want to draw out 5 and 4/9. One, because you've seen my drawing and you know how bad I can draw ninths. But if we're going to do this one, we're going to do 9 times 5, because that's our denominator, times 5 wholes. So that would give me 45 pieces right there. Then I already had 4 pieces here, so that means that's a total of 49 pieces. And they're all cut into ninths sizes. So that means my improper fraction that matches that is 49 ninths. My next fraction that we're going to do together is 6 3/8. So if I have 6 3/8, I have 8 pieces in each hole, and I have 6 holes. So 8 times 6 gives me a total of 48, but I already had 3 little pieces. So that's a total of 51. And they're each cut into 8th size pieces. So that is my improper fraction that matches that mixed number. Okay, so I'm going to have to stop this video, and I want you to make sure that this side of your notebook looks identical to what mine looks like before you go on to the next video, which will show you how to do improper fractions to mixed numbers. Thanks.